Welcome to another episode of the Doctors Building Wealth podcast. Today we're going to be talking about structure versus no structure. And I don't know who's going to win this one because this one's going to be a debate because Kenji really likes to build things in a really structured way. Every time we come into this podcast, we have a whole structure of what we're going to talk about. And I prefer to go for things a little bit more randomly with less of a plan. And so today we are actually doing this podcast with no plan, which should be fun.
Oh, so let me give you the structured introduction, which is that you're probably wondering, what is this episode actually about after that introduction? So this episode is about creating content and whether or not, on the one hand, you have somebody who is happy to just go off the cuff. And for me, I like to have things more structured before we put it in front of you guys.
Okay, so first of all, let's talk about why I love doing it off the cuff. Well, first of all, I think it leads to a lot more spontaneity and fun, which I think really has a certain energy to it and allows for playfulness, allows for a lot more interaction between, even though this is a podcast and you guys aren't here in the room with us, I think when you do things a little bit more unstructured, you have a lot more audience engagement and almost an interaction between the audience and the person speaking in the podcast. So I think it actually adds a lot to the energy and the experience of listening to a podcast or interacting with somebody in course material too, because when you think about it, our Q&As are really unstructured. And so whatever comes up, whatever's on people's minds, they get to bring up, and there really is a two-way kind of interaction that has a certain energy that really, when you are all structured, it just doesn't have.
I think it depends on what the content is about, right? So if it's a course, I think it's much better to be structured, right? I think if we're teaching something here on Doctors Building Wealth and we're trying to teach some concepts or we're laying out a framework, I think it's much better to be structured about it, maybe even provide a downloadable. If you're going to be providing a downloadable, I don't think, it's a good idea to go off the cuff and then just drop a downloadable on your lap and you're going to be like, that was not what they talked about. So that's the reason why I think I just prefer structure.
Now, there is a middle ground, right? There's the ground of having some basic structure, but allowing freedom within that structure, right? And not having every single line kind of laid out and not having a complete plan of every detail that you're going to discuss. And I can agree with you when you are providing a download or something like that. You've got to have some basic structure to make sure that it's relevant, to make sure you're not going to remember, forget to say that you have a download, to make sure that you're covering some of the content in the download. But I think that could be like 10 bullet points. You walk into a podcast or something with 10 bullet points instead of having an entire structure. So just to give you another argument, think about when you go and give a presentation, a speech in front of everybody, right? If you have a million words on a page of a PowerPoint, people are reading it, they're completely lost, there's so many ideas. If you literally have like 5 or 10 words on a PowerPoint, people are much more engaged in the experience, and it allows you as a speaker some freedom and some responsiveness to what's going on in the audience. And if there's, if people are participating, you can change things. It allows you a lot more flexibility and movement and fun, again, as the speaker, but also for the audience because you're actually responding to them. They're not just projecting. It's actually a two-way street.
Yeah, again, I think it depends on the audience too. And I think if you're going to be delivering some information, something that's helpful, I do think that the time, the preparation that goes into it, and I think that's the other maybe part of that, maybe the audience might not realize, and sometimes maybe you don't realize that there is a considerable amount of time and effort that goes into thinking about the episode, thinking about how to structure it. I agree that if it's too rigid, then it's going to lose some of that spontaneity, some of that fun. But again, if you're teaching something, if you're trying to explain something and it's going to be actually helpful to the audience, I think structure is really important. The other thing I wanted to point out is that, we get compliments about our course all the time saying that, this is really structured. It really works with how my brain works. And I think that that's something else that you have to take into account is our audience. And I think our audience, a lot of them I would even venture to guess that they prefer to have more of a kind of a logical sequence, have something be explained very clearly, have it be very well thought out. And so I think that's the reason why, especially with the content that we've been delivering, we're really trying to add value, right? This is not necessarily an entertainment show, right? So now, of course, I agree. If this was all entertainment, then yes, off the cuff, having it fluid, maybe a couple of bullet points about what it is we're going to talk about, I could see that making sense. But again, I think the nature of our podcasts, what we're intending to do, we're adding value, and then our audience, all those reasons, I think I think it's important for us to be structured.
I'm not disagreeing with you in that I don't think that you would do well with no structure at all. I don't think you can really deliver value in a way that people understand if you have absolutely no structure at all, but you have to allow freedom within it. So we talk a lot about business building. We talk about the price of entrepreneurial success is structure and leverage. So leverage is hiring people, having other people do some of the work. And, you can even leverage with like AI, for example. Structure is the systems and processes that make a business run. Well, even within systems and processes, one of the things that one of my mentors, Keith Cunningham, has said is you want to set up the systems and processes. You want to have SOPs, for example, but you have to allow freedom within the SOPs for the employees to be able to actually do it in different ways, because if you build things so rigidly, it takes the joy out of doing a job, and it can actually result in people not enjoying their work, not really caring about their work, just showing up and punching a number and leaving. And so even within structure like SOPs and structure within business, you have to allow that freedom to bring in the joy and for people to also see innovations where they can make things better. And if it's so rigid that it is step by step and there's no other way, you can actually harm your ability to keep really good players on your team because you are so controlling. So there's a middle ground.
Yeah, for sure. I think that there's a middle ground. If I think about some of my favorite podcasts, there is actually a fair degree of structure in terms of the topics and what they're going to be talking about. But then the rest of it is pretty free flow, and it's just getting people's thoughts off the cuff. But then again, these are people who are very, very well versed in the topics they're discussing, which we are. Yes, that's true.
Okay.
And so that's true. Yeah, we are well versed on it. I think the bottom line is that what we have evolved to was we did start out, I think, very, very structured, and then I think we've kind of moved a little bit more in the middle, right, between kind of being very structured and then being very freeform, because I think we've seen the downsides of both.
Yes. And just to give you guys all a little bit of context, we're very different personalities. So if you're familiar with the DISC personality, I'm an I, so I'm an influence. So I don't like to be in the details, and I like to move fast, and I like to, kind of figure it out as I go and trust that it's just going to work out really, really well. And so I tend towards a lot of optimism, sometimes mistaken optimism. Kenji is a D. So talk to us about what it's like to be a D.
Well, obviously the structure is important. I like to know what I'm talking about, and I don't know. I don't know what else to say about being a D in this context, I should say.
Well, the good thing is actually when you look at DISC, one of the things about Ds and Is is they tend to move quickly. And so I think that's one thing that really works for us very well is we tend to make decisions quickly. We tend to, and these decisions that are completely life-changing decisions that a lot of people would be like, hey, I need to sit around and think about it for months. Like we just make them and we go. Right. And so that's a really similarity that we share that's really, really helpful for us. When we're looking at making decisions and structure, though, you like to have a lot more structure than I like to have. And sometimes there can be friction with that. But it also means that where we end up is somewhere in between, which is a great improvement in probably what either of us would do alone. But it doesn't make it always easy, guys. I would just want to make sure that you understand there's often this tension between like how much structure is too much structure and how little structure and freeform is too much freeform, and it's just going to be flowing anywhere and not actually make a point, right?
Well, and I'm okay with doing that. I think that maybe actually this is something that the audience can tell us about. Maybe you guys might be interested in just hearing more of this type of of free form conversation where we pick a topic and we kind of go back and forth, I can definitely think of maybe some episodes where we just rant about something, right? I think that some people might like to hear about that because I have a lot of things that I can rant about for a long time. So if you guys are interested in something like that, just let us know in the show notes, and we'd be happy to include more episodes where we are ranting or we're just kind of free form talking about a topic.
Because
right.
we often have different opinions. I mean, I think that's one of the strengths of what we do in our course and in our community is we'll have a question, and all of you who ever attended our Q&As, there'll be a question, and sometimes we'll completely agree on it, but oftentimes we'll see different perspectives or different angles from it. And one person will answer it a specific way, addressing one part, but the other person will see a whole that they didn't address or actually have a completely different perspective on how to approach it. And when you get those two perspectives together, oftentimes you end up with a better outcome. And so there is a real, like, I think a lot of people in this situation where we all are actually is we have different human beings who we have as intimate partners who have different opinions and different ways that they like to do it, is you can resent it, or you can also see the outcome and how it delivers a better outcome because you have differences. Kenji has kept us from making a lot of bad decisions, a lot of rash decisions over time. And so it's really good to have his thoughtfulness. And there are times where I'll produce content, I'll think it's awesome, and he'll go in and he'll be like, this framework just doesn't work, and he'll completely rework it, and it makes a lot more logical sense, and I can see how it was better than what I produced. It's painful to have done, all this work, created this thing that I think is good, and then having completely rework it, but I know it's better in the end. And so over time, I've really, I think, moved from that like kind of initial resistance that maybe sometimes you tend to feel to really having a deep appreciation for how he improves what I do. And, when we move together and we tackle a problem, that together we actually make better decisions, we see alternatives, and it becomes, anything we produce becomes better because both of us are involved.
Yeah, and I wanted to, maybe speaking of Q&As, that is a place where we do a lot of free form and we don't prepare. And so may actually be a fun episode, right? We could actually tackle some questions. So, I mean, if you guys have in the audience have questions that you want us to answer, please let us know. And then you can also email us at support@semiretiredmd.com and send some questions that we can address on our podcast, and we'll answer them. We'll do it free form. Maybe I'll prepare a little bit, but yeah, generally the idea would be, and we do this really well during our Q&As during our course or in our membership site, and so we're always answering questions. And like Leti said, it's all free form, and yeah, it's fun because sometimes we do have those differing perspectives.
Yeah, I think. Do you have any response to what you think it does for you to have a little bit more of the unstructured approach in your life and how it's changed what you do?
I think that it's obviously great to both be exposed to and also to live life differently, right, than you might if you were just kind of living life on your own. And so absolutely, it's great to have just that very, very different approach to life. And yeah, I mean, obviously that's variety, right? That's what keeps life exciting.
Okay, well, I don't know that we have anything else to say in this episode. So this is our great debate between structure and freeform. And if you enjoy this episode, let us know for sure, and send it to a friend, subscribe, and we will see you next time.